Hi, this is Catherine, and welcome back to Taking Tea with Catherine. And today, first of all, I'm going to mention that I have been on BookTube, guess what? 6 months. Not today, a few days ago. I totally forgot my anniversary. But you know what? I can't remember everything. But I'm happy. I'm happy I've been around for 6 months. It's been a fun ride, and I've enjoyed most of it. Almost all of it, actually. And that's a good thing. You know, I'm a complainer, I'm a whiner, so if I have something to whine about, I will, and I have very little to whine about being a booktuber. But I'm also a book nerd, so I decided to observe my little anniversary by doing a tag, and I've been seeing this one floating around. It was created by Lindsay's Little Library, which is a nice theme. I love the name Lindsay's Little Library. It sounds so like rolls right off your tongue. And so I've chosen for today's tea time a stress tea. It's called Sweet Clementine Stress Support, and I've had it before on this channel. It was one of those bad commutes home days. My pretty cat notebook got a little wet in a backpack that has so far never gotten wet from the rain. But of course, it's only because I used a bigger umbrella today, so obviously the rain was going to somehow get into my backpack, so that was sad. But it's not destroyed, it's just slightly waterlogged, and you know, we got to roll with these kind of things. So let's talk about this tag. And I hope I wrote down the questions correctly, because I wrote it kind of second, third hand, and whatever, I'll do the best I can. So the first one is the one that all of us book nerds love to talk about. Book storage. How do you store and organize your books? Well, everywhere that I can possibly put them, but I try very much to organize, because I use bookshelves. You can call that storage, but I kind of think of storage as, boxes put away, sort of. But I have most of my books in these 3 bookshelves behind me, and they're IKEA Billy bookshelves, so they hold a lot. I have a small bookshelf in my bedroom with a few things. I don't know, I didn't count how many books were in there, but it's my smaller bookshelf. And I have a bookshelf in my living room for my mystery books, mostly mystery books, and that's of course about to overflow as well. I have another bookshelf coming soon, but I don't want to talk about it because I got it online and it requires assembly, and of course it arrives missing pieces because I don't want to talk about it. But anyway, that should actually help the overflow, and being able to put some of these books that are all over each other in a slightly nicer organization. I also have a cart, that's my TBR book cart, but obviously my TBR is a lot bigger than what can be contained in a book cart. It's still a nice book cart. I try to keep things in a semi-alphabetical order in terms of like authors and some subjects, but mostly authors. So I have my sort of hodgepodge of I know you can't see all the way up top right here, depending on how I angle this thing, but right now you can't. So I have a lot of old classics, and they're just kind of put together in design rather than alphabetical order. And then I start having poetry, and then this is not a bookshelf tour, but then it goes a little bit into my history books, and then I have my tea bookshelf down there. I have then more fiction, mostly hardcover fiction, and then some more nonfiction here. The next set, I have my paperback fiction, and also both fictions are alphabetical order, and then I have a whole bunch of more nonfiction piles. So I kind of hope to my fiction's overflowing, but it's organized. My nonfiction's not as well organized, and I really want to get on that. So hopefully this whole thing will be resolved, and you guys don't want to hear about my gripes. So moving on to number 2. Tracking. How do you keep track of what you have read and what books you own? So for many, many years, I have kept notebooks that are kind of book journals. They're not as good as they used to be. I could do better with my book journaling. But I have kept track for at least 20 years, if not more, the books I read in a year. So I'll at least write down in a list the name and the author. About 13 years ago, I had joined the site Library Thing. I think I mentioned this before. And that's where I started keeping tracks, not just the books that I read, because I have, I do that, but I also kept track of all the books I own there. So that's my main source of knowing what books I own. Because if I'm in a bookshop and I see a book and I think, oh, I like this, do I own it? Some people like owning multiple copies of things, but if I can help it, I try not to. So I like being able to refer to a website. And Goodreads is actually very good too. I am active on Goodreads, but I'm more active there in a social networking-ish capacity, I think, and just more recently keeping track of some books and etc. But they're both very good websites. So yeah, both of these, I don't have like an Excel spreadsheet like some people do because I'm terrible at Excel. And I just don't. I thought about doing that, but then I thought, I kind of like having online because you have all these tags and stuff you can work with. And it has very little setup. And now both sites have apps where you can scan things in a barcode, scan the barcode in, and that is just so much fun. I should have been a librarian. Okay, so the next question is under the subject of borrow. Do you lend your books out? For the most part, no, because I know that there have been times that books that were actually quite dear to me, but I thought someone I know really wants to read this, or I really want them to read it, so I would lend it to them, and next thing you know, I never saw it again. So I do have friends that I've lent things out to, and they just took a while, and they gave things back, and I'm fine with that. But at this point, I pretty much only lend things out to my sisters, because I know that even though I may not get them back tomorrow, I'm going to get them back. I trust my sisters very much that way. And the one that lives in Texas, she will come visit, and she'll look through my shelves and borrow a few things, and take them back with her, and then when I visit her, she'll give me some of them back, or if she visits again, she'll bring them back. So it's a slow lending library, but it works because she always reads them in a time period that I usually don't miss them. But then I want to read them because she's so enthusiastic about them. So it's great. And again, I would love to be able to, because I have all these books that I'm not reading them all at once right now. I would love to be able to lend them out. Wouldn't that be nice? But I don't, when I say I don't trust people, I'm not saying they're going to steal my social security number, but I just feel like people don't understand why you want the books back sometimes. So yeah, they're not book nerds, baby. And that's why we're doing the book nerd tag. Okay, buying. How do you buy or acquire your books? In so many different ways. So obviously, I have so many websites online that I buy from in recent years. Obviously, Amazon I still use. I use Thrift Books. I use Book Depository, which is great when I want to get British books for a decent price. Alibris I've used before. Did I say Thrift Books? I think I said Thrift Books. I'm going to repeat myself. I borrow books from the library. I have tons of books. I do have tons of books. I have tons of libraries nearby. I do. I have one library very close to where I live, and then I have where I work. I have so many within a few blocks, and it's crazy. I'm just in that one part of Manhattan where there's just so many libraries. So the fact that I buy so many books is kind of crazy too. But anyway, lots of bookshops. Obviously, when I go away, which I'm not this world traveler, but I do get out once in a while. And when I go away, I usually look for a bookshop, almost always. And I will try to buy something from some bookshop when I go away. So yeah, lots, especially London, but anywhere else really. And of course nearby I have that Book Off, which I mentioned recently, Argosy, which, just up their prices. So the Strand and all their kiosks, I love. The Astoria Bookshop, which is a local bookshop to me, and they're a great independent bookshop. When I feel like buying from an independent bookshop, that's usually my go-to. They have a really good collection, and it's just the best smelling bookshop ever. And that sounds weird, but they do. And of course, used bookshops I go to around about in the area, and let's not forget Barnes & Noble. I definitely buy books from Barnes & Noble sometimes. Sometimes I get advanced reviewer copies, and that's not every day, but I do get some, so that's a way of acquiring. And sometimes people give me books, which thank you guys. And next book. How do you pick your next read? So since I started booktubing, I have done more of these challenges, and that has narrowed and honed my ability to pick TBRs and, keep a little more organized way of reading books. Nevertheless, I still have like 10 books usually that I'm in the middle of. But I've been trying to, obviously, like I said, I've been on BookTube for 6 months, and even though I do pick TBRs and try to stick to them, I'm trying to balance out with keeping my mood reading going, because I find that I could have a stack of books and that these are my books for this month. And that's fun, and I look forward to it. I get excited about it. And I love opening the book up, and here I'm starting it. But sometimes there's just a book that I've been seeing lying around my apartment, and I said, oh, I didn't fit this into my TBR, but I really want to read it. It's not going to stop me from reading it if I really, really want to read it, or if a book that I saw in the library and I want to check it out. So I have to keep some mood reading going. I must. And of course, I'm in a book club, which meets a few times a year, so sometimes that'll help me pick a book as well. I think the next book is Great Gatsby, which I haven't actually read yet, so excellent. So comments. How do you respond to the how do you read so much comment or similar comments? I am not always good at reading people's intentions behind their questions. Like, is it sarcastic? Is it a kind, they really want to know question? Are they complimenting me, or are they putting me down? Like in junior high school, when the girls would ask me, where do you get your clothes? That's a loaded question. Is that going to be a good thing or not? So sometimes when I hear this question, I can tell from the tone what they mean by it, but often I'm not sure. So I feel myself getting defensive, because there are people who will say, how do you read so much? How do you find time to read? And it's almost like they're saying, what are you neglecting? So, and I try not to be defensive like that, but it just happens. If I really feel like that's behind their questioning, I will try to either just answer a really quick, manufactured answer. But sometimes, because I know if someone's really interested, I say, when you like something, you have a hobby, whatever it is that you love, you make time for it. So end of discussion. But if I feel like their intentions aren't good, I will say that I have irritable bowel syndrome, and that means I spend a lot of time in a certain room, which gives me a lot of time to read, which is incredibly TMI. And sometimes that can open me up to people being a little repulsed, obviously, and sometimes it will also lead into advice for dieting, which I don't care for. But it shuts them up, because usually, because it's like, oh, I opened up a can of worms there. And honestly, that's I do a lot of reading in my free time in other rooms, so that's just completely, but but you know what, sometimes you just ask a stupid question. All right, so the next question is travel. How do you pick your books you bring on vacation with you? And books plural, because I almost never bring just one book. I have this thought that if I ever get a chance, and hopefully I will, to go back to London, I have that copy of Shirley by Charlotte Bronte that I hate because it's got all this writing in it. And I thought I could just bring that with me and buy books when I'm there for my return trip, because I'm going to buy books when I'm in London. And then leave it behind, because I already have that other book that has Shirley in it as well. So that's a fun plan. But normally that's not my plan. So normally I pick one or two books that I plan to read soon that are totable, because I'm not much of a reader on e-readers. I know they're great and convenient, just not my thing right now. So annotate. Do you write or highlight or mark up your books in any way? Not if I can help it, because I don't like I mentioned that Shirley book before, the writing in there and the really bad underlining just got to me. But sometimes I will want notes in certain books, like history books, whatever, and that's what Post-its are for. They're great. Even sometimes people stick pieces of paper in books, but we have Post-its. They stick. That's great. But if it's not sticky, then you have certain editions of books that have very thin pages that you don't want to mess with. So then stick a piece of paper. If it's a book that really feels like it could stand for a little beating up and I feel like writing notes inside of it, I will probably even then think twice, but then I might use a pencil to write lightly because then I can erase it. But that's very rare. So, which do you prefer? New releases or backlist books? I mean, I like both. I love reading classics and books that have been around for a while. I like books that have had time to simmer and, see if they stand the test of time, that kind of thing. But when it comes to buying books, I prefer backlist because it's more affordable. But if there's a book that's new, there's always going to be a few books every year that I'm dying to read that just came out. This year I read Tombland by C.J. Sansom, which was fantastic, by the way. Then I will usually not buy it. Usually I'll check it out of the library. If I buy it, it's probably because I have a coupon. But mostly backlist books. This is the last question. Sequels. Do you read books as they are released, or wait for an entire series to be published before reading one book? Well, I don't read a lot of books that are series or sequels. I read some, don't get me wrong, but it's not my main source of reading material. I prefer to read them when they're coming out because why do I want to wait? So that's what I do. Of course, it's been a series that's been around for like over 20 years, it's probably complete. And then I will obviously have waited for it to be complete. But I just don't see the point of waiting till they're all together to start them. Because what if I just don't see the point to that. So that's it. And this has been Dilemmas of a Book Nerd tag with Catherine. And this has been rainy, kind of cranky day, kind of TMI day. But I hope you have a lovely day and enjoy your reading. Have a wonderful time.